The rain fell hard on the streets of Seoul as Daewon carried his gyeogyum through the narrow alleys. His traditional Korean instrument was wrapped in plastic to keep it dry, but his jacket was already soaked through. He didn't care. Tonight he would play at the underground club near the old market, and if he was lucky, he might earn enough credits to pay this month's rent for his grandmother's music school. Earth in 2247 was not the shining jewel that humanity had dreamed it would become. While other planets in the galaxy thrived with advanced technology and interstellar trade, Earth remained isolated and poor. The Galactic Council had given humanity a small seat at the table, but only barely. They called Earth a backwater world. They said humans had nothing valuable to offer. The taxes were heavy, and the respect was non-existent. Daewon was 28 years old and had spent his entire life fighting to keep traditional music alive in a world that seemed to have forgotten its value. His grandmother had taught him to play the gyeogyum when he was 6. She had told him that music was the soul of their people, that it carried the pain and joy of thousands of years. But now her school was failing. Students didn't come anymore. They wanted to learn about space travel and alien languages, not old songs. He reached the club just as the evening crowd began to gather. The place was small and dark, with walls covered in old posters and graffiti. The owner, an older man named Sang-ho, nodded at him from behind the bar. Daewon set up his equipment on the tiny stage. He had modified his gyeogyum to connect with electronic synthesizers, creating a fusion of old and new. Some people called it brilliant. Others called it a waste of time. Above Earth's atmosphere, something unusual was happening. A massive ship from the Galactic Cultural Exchange Commission had entered orbit. Inside the ship, dozens of alien beings moved through sterile white corridors preparing for their routine census of the primitive human world. They came every 10 years to count population, assess technology levels, and file reports that no one would ever read. Hana stood near the observation deck, watching Earth rotate below. She was young for a xenoanthropologist assistant, barely past her training period. This was her first assignment to a listed world, and she was excited despite the dismissive attitudes of her superiors. The lead inspector, a tall Veltari official named Quinn, had made it clear that Earth was beneath their attention. Primitive mammals, Quinn had said during the briefing. They barely made it to their own moon before we found them. No art worth preserving, no culture worth studying. We'll be done here in 3 days. But Hana believed every species had something unique. She had studied human history during the voyage. Their wars, their struggles, their strange attachment to something they called music. Most advanced species had abandoned such things long ago. Music was inefficient, emotional, and served no practical purpose. Yet humans seemed to create it constantly. The away team descended to Seoul in a small shuttle. Quinn wanted to inspect the administrative centers and count populations in major cities. Hana followed with her recording equipment, documenting everything as required. The city was loud and chaotic compared to the ordered worlds she knew. Humans rushed everywhere, talking and laughing and arguing. It was overwhelming. As evening fell, Quinn led the team through the older districts. He complained constantly about the smell, the noise, and the inefficiency of human architecture. Hana trailed behind, trying to record interesting details. That's when she heard it. Music. It was coming from a narrow alley ahead. The sound was strange and beautiful, like nothing she had heard before. It made something twist inside her chest, an uncomfortable feeling she couldn't name. She activated her recorder and moved toward the source. Daewon was performing on the street corner outside the club, trying to attract customers inside. His fingers moved across the gyeogyum strings while electronic beats pulsed underneath. He sang in Korean, his voice raw with emotion, telling a story about mountains and longing and home. A small crowd of humans had gathered, some swaying to the rhythm, others just listening with closed eyes. Hana stopped at the edge of the crowd, her recording device capturing everything. She felt strange. Her breathing had changed. Something about the sound patterns was affecting her in ways her training had never prepared her for. It was illogical. It was just vibrations in the air. But somehow it felt like the music was reaching inside her and touching something she didn't know existed. "What are you doing?" Quinn's harsh voice shattered the moment. He grabbed Hana's arm and pulled her away from the crowd. Several humans looked up in surprise at the sight of the tall alien dragging the younger assistant away. "That's primitive noise pollution," Quinn snapped. He checked Hana's recording device and saw what she had captured. His expression twisted with disgust. You're wasting storage space on this? He pressed the delete button and the recording vanished. We're here to count them, not study their animal sounds. Come on. Hana followed him back to the shuttle, but her hand went to the small personal backup device hidden in her pocket. She had started automatically backing up all her recordings on the second day of the mission, a habit from her training. The music was still there. She didn't know why, but she knew she needed to keep it. That night back on the ship, Hana couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the strange human on the street corner, about the way his music had made her feel. Finally, she gave up and went to the recreation area. It was empty except for one person. Jinsu sat in the corner working on some kind of mechanical device. He was half human, half Arathi, with dark hair and eyes that held old pain. He worked as a smuggler and hired transport pilot, someone the Commission used when they needed to move through dangerous areas. He kept to himself mostly. Can't sleep either? He asked without looking up. Hana hesitated, then sat down across from him. Can I ask you something? You're part human. Do you know what music is? Jinsu's hand stopped moving. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. Why do you ask? I recorded something today. A human was making these sounds and it made me feel strange. I don't understand it. Play it, Jinsu said quietly. Hana pulled out her backup device and activated it. Day One's voice filled the small room, accompanied by the haunting strings of the Gaiageum and the electronic beats. She watched Jinsu's face carefully. His expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes became wet with something that looked like tears. He sat completely still until the recording ended. Then he turned away quickly and wiped his face. Are you okay? Hana asked, concerned. I haven't cried since I was a child, Jinsu said, his voice rough. My human mother used to sing to me before she died. I forgot what it felt like. He turned back to her and there was something fierce in his eyes now. Where did you find this human? I need to know. Hana told him about the street corner in Seoul, about the musician with the strange instrument. Jinsu listened carefully, already planning. I'm going back down there, he said. That human doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to make him an offer. What kind of offer? Jinsu smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just discovered a secret that could change everything. I'm going to take him to the outer rim. Let him play for people who've never heard anything like this. If his music can make me feel again after 20 years of nothing, imagine what it could do to others. That's insane, Hana said. Earth is isolated. He probably doesn't even know about the greater galaxy. Then it's time he learned, Jinsu replied, and time the galaxy learned about him. Below them, Daewon finished his performance at the club and counted his earnings. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. He packed his Gaiageum carefully and headed home through the rain, unaware that his life was about to change forever. Unaware that tomorrow, a half-human smuggler would walk into his grandmother's music school and offer him something impossible. Unaware that he was about to become the most important human in the galaxy. Jinsu found Daewon at his grandmother's music school the next morning. The building was old and small, tucked between newer structures that made it look even more forgotten. Paint peeled from the walls and the sign above the door had faded until the Korean characters were barely readable. Inside, an elderly woman was teaching a single student, a young girl who looked bored. Daewon was in the back room repairing a broken drum when Jinsu walked in. He looked up at the stranger and immediately knew this wasn't a normal customer. The man was tall and moved like a fighter. His clothes were functional and expensive, the kind you saw in videos about space travel. And his eyes were strange, not quite human. Daewon, Jinsu asked. Who wants to know? Someone who heard you play last night. Someone who wants to offer you a job. Jinsu sat down without being invited. How would you like to perform at the Rust Moon Station? There's an underground market there where people from 40 different worlds come to trade. The pay is 10,000 galactic credits for one night. Daewon stared at him. 10,000 credits was more money than he made in a year. It was enough to save the school, to repair everything, to keep his grandmother's dream alive for years. But it made no sense. Why would anyone out there want to hear me play? He asked. Jinsu leaned forward. Because your music does something that nothing else in the galaxy can do. It makes people feel things they forgot they could feel. Trust me on this. It took 3 days of convincing. Daewon's grandmother told him to go. Music is meant to be shared, she said. If the stars want to hear our songs, then you must sing for them. So Daewon packed his Gaiagium and followed Jinsu to a hidden spaceport outside the city, where a small cargo ship waited. The journey to the Rust Moon Station took 2 weeks. Daewon spent most of it staring out the viewports at the endless darkness of space, trying to understand that he had left Earth. Jinsu taught him basic galactic common language and explained how to interact with different species. Don't stare at the Karathi, he said. Don't touch the silt unless they touch you first. And never ever comment on a Veltari's height. The Rust Moon Station was overwhelming. It was a massive structure built into an asteroid, with thousands of beings moving through crowded corridors. Daewon saw creatures he couldn't have imagined. Some walked on 6 legs, some floated. Some were covered in scales or fur or something that looked like metal. The noise was incredible, a mixture of languages and sounds that hurt his ears. Jinsu led him to a large open area that served as the station's entertainment district. A crude stage had been set up in the center, surrounded by tables and vendor stalls. Beings of all kinds filled the space, drinking and trading and arguing. This is where you'll play, Jinsu said. Tonight. I've already spread the word that something unique is coming. Daewon felt sick with nervousness. These beings didn't know what music was. How could he possibly reach them? But he had come this far and his grandmother was counting on him. He set up his equipment on the stage, checking the Gaiagium carefully. He had brought his electronic synthesizer too, all his equipment packed into 2 bags. The crowd that gathered was skeptical at best. A group of Karathi warriors, tall and armored, laughed and made comments in their harsh language. A Veltari merchant looked annoyed at the interruption to his business. Several beings just stared with expressions Daewon couldn't read. He began to play. At first, he kept it simple, just the Gaiagium, letting the traditional sound fill the space. The strings sang with a clear, pure tone that seemed to cut through the station's noise. Some beings stopped talking. Others looked confused. The Karathi warriors continued laughing. Then Daewon added the electronic beats, building layers of sound. He began to sing, his voice rising and falling with emotion. He sang about Earth, about mountains and rivers he had never seen but that lived in the old songs. He sang about loneliness and hope and the ache of missing home. Something changed in the crowd. A silt merchant, a thin being with gray skin and large eyes, stopped mid-conversation. Her mouth opened slightly. She had lost her entire colony to a plague 3 years ago and hadn't spoken more than necessary since then. Now tears ran down her face and she began to make a sound, a keening note that matched Daewon's melody. The Karathi warriors had gone completely still. One of them, a massive soldier with scars covering his arms, lowered his weapon to the table. His hands were shaking. He stared at Daewon with an expression of shock. Near the back, a group of Nexus drones, cybernetic beings who processed everything through logic, began to malfunction. Their optical sensors flickered. One of them emitted a sound like static mixed with something almost like crying. Daewon played harder, pouring everything into the music. He forgot about the strange crowd, forgot about the money, forgot about everything except the song. This was what his grandmother had taught him. Music was the language of the soul, and souls were universal. When he finished, there was complete silence. Then chaos. Beings rushed forward, some trying to touch him, others shouting questions in languages he didn't understand. Jinsu jumped onto the stage and pulled him back, creating space. The crowd was frenzied now, desperate for more. In the confusion, Daewon noticed a human woman standing at the edge of the crowd. She was tall and slim, with short black hair and eyes that studied everything. She moved toward the stage with purpose, and Jinsu let her approach. "My name is Yuna," she said in Korean, her voice urgent. "I'm a human audio engineer. I left Earth 10 years ago. I need to talk to you immediately." They retreated to Jinsu's ship while the crowd outside continued to grow. Yuna pulled out a data pad and showed Daewon complex charts and graphs he didn't understand. "I've been researching this for 5 years," she said. "Human music affects other species in ways that nothing else does." "Do you know why?" Daewon shook his head. "Because we're slow," Yuna explained. "Humans took millions of years to develop emotionally. We created art and music to process our feelings, to communicate things words couldn't say. Most spacefaring species didn't do that. They developed technology fast, either through hive minds or military necessity or just luck. They skipped the emotional evolution, so when they hear human music, it hits something in their brains that never fully developed. It's like we're teaching them to feel for the first time." "That sounds dangerous," Daewon said quietly. "It is. Yuna agreed, and someone very powerful just figured that out. As if summoned by her words, a well-dressed Veltari appeared at the ship's entrance. He wore expensive clothes and had the smooth manner of a corporate executive. Behind him stood several armed guards. "My name is Ven, representative of Harmony Incorporated," he said. "We are the galaxy's largest entertainment conglomerate. We would like to purchase your music, Day One of Earth. All rights, all recordings, complete ownership. We're prepared to offer you 1 million galactic credits." The number made Day One's head spin. That was generational wealth. His grandmother would never worry again. But something in the man's smile made him uncomfortable. "What would you do with it?" he asked. "Control it, of course," Ven said smoothly. "Music this powerful can't be allowed to spread freely. It needs to be regulated, distributed properly, monetized correctly. We would make you wealthy beyond imagination. And in return, you would never perform publicly again. You would record exclusively for us." "No," Day One said. The word came out before he could think. Ven's smile disappeared. "You don't understand. Earth has no copyright protections under galactic law. We could simply take your music and claim it as ours. This offer is a courtesy." "Try it," Jinsu said coldly, his hand moving to his weapon. Ven looked at them both, his expression hardening. "You're making a mistake. Harmony Incorporated doesn't like to be refused." He turned and left, his guards following. Yuna looked worried. "He's right about the copyright thing. Earth is barely recognized by the Galactic Council. You have almost no legal protections out here." "Then what do we do?" Day One asked. Before anyone could answer, Jinsu's communication panel began buzzing frantically. He checked it and his expression changed. "You need to see this." He pulled up a holographic display. It showed footage of Day One's performance, spreading across the quantum net like wildfire. Billions of beings across dozens of worlds were watching. The comments were in hundreds of languages, but the translation made the meaning clear. "What is this? Where can we hear more? I haven't felt like this in years. This human must perform again." "You're viral," Yuna said, sounding amazed and frightened at the same time. "You're the most famous being in the galaxy right now." Day One stared at the numbers climbing higher. Views in the billions, shares in the millions. And then he saw other things. Warnings from various planetary governments. Calls for Earth to be quarantined. Threats from military powers. Arguments breaking out in the Galactic Council chambers. "What have I done?" he whispered. Jinsu put a hand on his shoulder. "You showed them something real. Now we deal with the consequences." The emergency summons came 3 days after Day One's performance went viral. A military transport from Earth arrived at the Rust Moon station, and a hard-faced woman in a diplomatic uniform stepped out. Her name was Minseo, and she was Earth Defense's senior diplomat to the Galactic Council. She did not look happy. "You've created an interstellar incident," she told Day One without preamble. "The Galactic Council is in emergency session right now. 7 different empires are demanding Earth's immediate quarantine. 3 more want you arrested. And 2 want to declare war on anyone who tries to use what they're calling a psychological weapon." "It's just music," Day One protested. "No, it's not," Minseo said sharply. "Come with me. All of you. There's someone you need to meet." They traveled to a secure station in neutral space. There, in a shielded conference room, they found Yuna's research displayed across multiple screens. She had been working non-stop since the performance, compiling data from across the galaxy. "Look at this," Yuna said, pointing to a historical file marked with high-level security clearances. 800 years ago, a human colony ship left Earth. It was during the early expansion period before we made contact with the greater galaxy. The ship was called the Destiny, and it carried 10,000 colonists. Official records say it was lost in a navigation accident. "That's not what really happened," Minseo said. "I've accessed the classified files. The Destiny reached the Draxus sector and established a colony on an empty world. The Draxus Empire found them 30 years later." Yuna pulled up more files. The Draxus were militaristic and brutal. They conquered the human colony easily and put them to work. But the humans kept singing. They sang their folk songs while they worked. They sang their children to sleep. They sang at gatherings, and something started to happen. The files showed reports from confused Draxus commanders. Soldiers were refusing orders. Citizens were questioning the Empire's methods. Entire military units were deserting. The more the Draxus tried to stop the humans from singing, the worse it got. Within 2 generations, the mighty Draxus Empire had collapsed into dozens of smaller states, most of them peaceful. The Galactic Council buried this, Mincio continued. They marked Earth as non-contact and made sure no one would look too closely at us. They were terrified of what human music could do to their own power structures. Jinsu leaned back in his chair. So they left Earth poor and isolated on purpose. To contain us. Exactly, Mincio said. And now you've blown that containment wide open. Day One felt sick. I just wanted to help my grandmother's school. I know, Mincio said, her expression softening slightly. But intentions don't matter now. What matters is what we do next. I have a proposal. She pulled up a star map showing the galactic capital, a massive artificial planet called Throne Prime. The Council has agreed to hear testimony about Earth's status. If we can prove that human music is not a weapon but a gift, we might be able to secure Earth a real seat at the Council. Protection. Trade agreements. A future? How do we prove that? Daewon asked. You perform, Mincio said simply. At the Council chambers in front of representatives from every major power. You show them what music really is. That's insane, Yuna said. The militaristic empires will never allow it. They'll see it as an attack. Maybe, Mincio agreed. But it's the only chance we have. Otherwise, Earth stays isolated forever. Or worse, they decide we're too dangerous and neutralize us. Jinsu's communication device buzzed. He checked it and frowned. We have visitors. A lot of them. They went to the observation deck and saw dozens of small ships approaching the station. They carried no military markings. As they docked, beings of all species began to disembark. Karathi warriors, Veltari merchants, Silt refugees, even some Nexus drones. One of the Karathi, the scarred soldier from Daewon's performance, approached them. He spoke in halting galactic common. We are the silent collective. We are soldiers who heard human music and could not fight anymore. We are merchants who heard human music and could not cheat anymore. We are people who were lost and then found ourselves again. How many of you are there? Mincio asked. Thousands now, the Karathi said. More every day. We came to warn you. If you perform at the Council, the empires will see it as a declaration of war. They will destroy Earth rather than let this spread. Daewon looked at all the faces watching him. These beings had given up their old lives because of something he played. The weight of responsibility was crushing. Then what should I do? That is your choice, the Karathi said. But know this. We have lived without feeling for so long. What you gave us was worth any price. If you choose to stay silent and keep Earth safe, we understand. But if you choose to speak, to play, to share this gift, we will stand with you. That night, Daewon couldn't sleep. He walked through the station's corridors thinking about his grandmother, about Earth, about all the beings whose lives he had changed. He found himself in one of the small gardens that stations maintained for oxygen production. Yuna was there, working on a portable recording device. She looked up when he entered. Can't sleep either? I don't know what to do, Daewon admitted. If I perform, Earth might be destroyed. If I don't, we stay prisoners forever. There's a third option, Yuna said. She held up the device. I've been thinking about something. What if it's not just about you performing? What if we bring more human musicians? Show the galaxy that this isn't one person's weapon, but humanity's nature. Daewon thought about the underground music scene in Seoul. All those talented artists playing for small crowds. Their gifts unknown to the galaxy. We'd need people willing to take the risk. Jinsu already has people in mind, Yuna said. He's been recruiting. Over the next week, 3 more humans arrived at the neutral station. Tae-sung was a hip-hop artist from Busan, all energy and rapid-fire lyrics. Bora was a classical cellist, quiet and precise. Hyunwoo was a traditional pansori singer, his voice trained to carry stories across mountains. They practiced together in the station's cargo bay, learning to blend their different styles. Tae-sung's beats merged with Bora's classical melodies. Hyunwoo's narrative singing wove through Daewon's gyeogyum. They created something new, something that carried the full range of human emotion. The silent collective grew larger. More beings arrived every day, all of them transformed by hearing human music. Some brought their families. Others came alone. They shared their stories in broken galactic common. A Veltari general who had ordered the destruction of entire planets now spent his days helping refugees. A corporate executive who had ruined thousands of lives was learning to create art instead of profit. Mincio watched it all with calculating eyes. This could work, she said. If the council sees what music actually does, how it changes people for the better, they might listen. Or they might panic and attack, Jinsu pointed out. That's the risk, Minseo agreed. Daewon, it has to be your decision. You started this. Daewon looked at his fellow musicians, at Yuna, who had dedicated years to understanding what they represented, at Jinsu, who had found his lost humanity through a street performance, at the Silent Collective, beings from 100 worlds who had chosen peace over violence because of simple songs. He thought about his grandmother teaching him to play when he was small. Music is the soul of our people, she had said. It carries pain and joy. It connects us to each other and to everyone who came before us. Never be ashamed of this gift. We go to Throne Prime, Daewon said. We perform for the council. Whatever happens after that, at least we tried. Minseo nodded slowly. Then we need to prepare. The council session is in 2 weeks. Security will be massive. Harmony Incorporated will try to stop you. The militaristic empires will be watching for any excuse to strike. And if anything goes wrong, Earth doesn't have the military power to defend itself. We don't need military power, Taesung said, spinning a drumstick between his fingers. We've got something better. What's that? Minseo asked. The truth, Bora said quietly. That feeling things isn't weakness. That emotion isn't a threat. That maybe the galaxy has been running on empty for too long. They began the journey to Throne Prime the next day. Their small convoy of ships was escorted by the Silent Collective's vessels, a ragtag fleet that grew larger as they traveled. Word spread across the quantum net. The humans who made people feel were going to perform at the Galactic Council. Some called it the bravest thing they'd ever seen. Others called it suicide. Daewon didn't know which one was right. He just knew that his grandmother's words kept echoing in his mind. Music is meant to be shared, even if sharing it might cost everything. Throne Prime was unlike anything Daewon had imagined. The artificial planet was a massive sphere of metal and light, with cities stacked on top of cities. Millions of beings from thousands of worlds lived and worked there, all serving the Galactic Council in some capacity. Their small convoy was dwarfed by the orbital traffic as they approached. Security is going to be intense, Minseo warned. The council is divided. Some want to hear you. Others want you arrested the moment you land. They docked at a diplomatic port and were immediately surrounded by armed guards. Not hostile, but watchful. Hana was waiting for them. The young xenoanthropologist had risked her career to testify on their behalf, and she looked nervous but determined. The council session is in 6 hours, she said. But there are problems. Harmony Incorporated has deployed sonic dampeners throughout the council chambers. They claim it's a safety measure to prevent psychological attacks. The dampeners will neutralize the emotional impact of your music. Can we disable them? Jinsu asked. Maybe, Yuna said, already pulling up technical diagrams on her data pad. But we'd need access to the chamber's control systems. That's impossible, security. I can help with that, Hana said quietly. I still have clearance from my days with the Cultural Exchange Commission. But if we're caught, they'll know I helped you. You don't have to do this, Daewon told her. Hana smiled sadly. Yes, I do. Your music showed me that there's more to life than just observing it. I want to be part of something real. The council chambers were enormous, a circular room with seating for representatives from hundreds of worlds. At the center was a stage where speakers addressed the assembly. Daewon and the other musicians were kept in a holding area beneath the chamber, waiting for their turn. Above them, the debate had already begun. Through monitors, they could watch council members arguing about Earth's fate. The chamber was clearly divided. The Veltari representative stood tall, his voice carrying authority. Earth must remain isolated. Human music is a psychological weapon, whether they intend it as such or not. We cannot allow it to destabilize our civilizations. An older representative from the Wanderer species, ancient beings who rarely spoke, raised a thin hand. We must hear before we judge. Fearing emotion is not wisdom. It is cowardice. A Karathi military commander slammed his fist on his console. My empire has already lost 3 battalions to desertion after soldiers heard these human sounds. This is an act of war, intentional or not. Earth must answer for this. Hana and Yuna worked frantically on accessing the dampener controls while Jinsu stood guard. The clock was counting down. In 3 hours, Daewon would be called to perform, and if the dampeners were active, the music would be rendered harmless. A curiosity instead of a revelation. "I'm in," Yuna whispered suddenly. "But there's a problem. The dampeners are on a closed system. To disable them, someone needs to physically access the main control node, and that's inside the Harmony Incorporated security station." Jinsu checked his weapons. "Where is it?" "You can't fight your way through Throne Prime security," Minseo said sharply. "Watch me." "Wait," Hana said. She was looking at her data pad with a strange expression. "There's another way. If I testify before the council and present my research about human music, I can request that the dampeners be disabled for scientific accuracy." "They might actually agree." "That's a huge risk," Minseo warned. "If you speak up for us, you'll be marked. No more career in xenoanthropology." "Probably no more career anywhere." Hana stood up, straightening her uniform. "Then it's good that I've decided I don't want that career anymore. I want to study real culture, not file reports for people who are afraid of feeling things." She left before anyone could stop her. On the monitors, they watched as she walked onto the council floor and requested permission to speak. The chamber fell silent as she approached the central stage. "My name is Hana of the Veltari homeworld," she began. "I am a xenoanthropologist with the Cultural Exchange Commission. I was part of the team that surveyed Earth 10 days ago. I am here to present evidence that human music is not a weapon, but a natural expression of their evolutionary development." The chamber erupted in debate. The Veltari representative looked furious, but the Wanderer representative raised his hand for silence, and the ancient being's authority was respected. "Continue," the Wanderer said. Hana presented her research, charts showing how human emotional development differed from other species, historical records of the Draxus collapse with analysis proving that the empire fell because it was already hollow, not because human music destroyed it. Data from the Silent Collective showing reduced violence and increased cooperation among beings exposed to human music. "The dampeners in this chamber are not safety measures," Hana concluded. "They are barriers to understanding. If you truly want to judge whether human music is dangerous, you must experience it as it was meant to be experienced." With open hearts, the Veltari representative stood. "This is manipulation." "She has clearly been compromised by exposure to the humans. Then you fear your own weakness," the Wanderer replied calmly. "I vote to disable the dampeners. Let us hear with clarity." The vote was close, but it passed. The dampeners powered down with a hum that faded into silence. Hana returned to the holding area, shaking but triumphant. Yuna hugged her. "You did it," she said. "Now you have to," Hana replied, looking at Daewon. The call came. It was time. Daewon and the other musicians walked onto the council floor. The chamber held thousands of beings, all watching them with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. Daewon felt his hands shaking as he set up his geogum. Beside him, Tae-sung checked his electronic equipment. Bora tuned her cello. Hyunwoo stood still, breathing deeply, preparing his voice. "We are the harmonic resistance," Daewon said, his voice amplified across the chamber. "We're not here to attack you. We're here to share something that humanity has carried for thousands of years. The ability to feel, to hurt, to hope, and to heal. If that's a weapon, then every species here is already armed with the same thing. You've just forgotten how to use it." He began to play. Hyunwoo's voice rose first, a traditional pansori that told the story of humanity's long climb from caves to stars. His voice was trained to carry across mountains, and in the chamber it echoed like thunder and whispered like wind. He sang of struggle and survival, of loss and persistence. Bora's cello joined in, her classical training adding layers of complexity. The strings wept with sorrow and soared with joy. She played pieces written by human composers dead for centuries, their emotions preserved in notes that transcended time. Taesung's beats dropped like hammer blows, modern and urgent. His rap told the story of Earth's isolation, of being called primitive while carrying something priceless. His words were sharp and angry and true, challenging the assembled powers to see their own emptiness. Daewon wove it all together with his geogyeom, the traditional instrument singing alongside the modern, the old and new united. He added his voice to the harmony, and together they created something that was purely human. Pain and joy mixed together, inseparable and real. The effect on the council was immediate and overwhelming. The Veltari representative sank into his seat, his hands covering his face. Tears ran between his fingers. He had ordered the deaths of thousands in his military career. Always justified by logic and necessity, now he felt the weight of those deaths, and it broke something inside him. Karathi warriors throughout the chamber lowered their heads. Some wept openly. Others stood at attention, but their hands shook. They were remembering fallen comrades, forgotten homes, and the cost of endless war. Even the Nexus drones, beings who processed everything through pure logic, began to display errors. Their optical sensors flickered between colors. Some made sounds that were almost like singing, as if they were trying to join in. The ancient wanderers, who had shown no emotion in recorded history, smiled. Not with happiness or sadness, but with recognition. They remembered something their species had lost long ago. The performance lasted 30 minutes, but it felt like both an instant and an eternity. When the final note faded, the chamber sat in complete silence. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds, all stunned into stillness. Then the wanderer representative stood. He began to clap, a sound that humans had taught the galaxy long ago. Others joined in. The applause built like a wave, not just approval but gratitude. Day One felt exhausted, drained in a way that had nothing to do with physical effort. He had given everything to that performance. Beside him, the other musicians looked equally spent. Then the alarms began to scream. On the chamber's main display, a horrifying image appeared. A massive fleet of Karathi warships had just exited hyperspace above Throne Prime. Hundreds of vessels, all armed, all powered up for combat. The Karathi Supreme Commander's face filled the screen. He was old and scarred, a veteran of countless wars. His expression was hard as iron. "This is Supreme Commander Rax of the Karathi Empire." His voice boomed through the chamber. "What we just witnessed was an act of war. Earth has deployed a psychological weapon that threatens the stability of all military powers. We demand Earth's immediate sterilization. If the Council does not comply, we will destroy Throne Prime and anyone who stands with the humans." The chaos in the Council chambers froze. Every eye turned to Day One, standing alone on the stage with his microphone. On the screen, Supreme Commander Rax stared down at him with an expression of disbelief. "You dare?" The commander's voice was deadly quiet. "You think another performance will save you? My fleet has weapons locked on Throne Prime. One word from me and this entire planet becomes dust." "I know," Day One said. His voice echoed through the chamber and broadcast across all channels. "But you felt something when we played. I saw it in your face. Before you destroy us, before you destroy yourselves by killing everyone here, give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to play one song." "Why would I allow this?" Rax demanded. "Because you're afraid," Day One said simply. "Not of me, not of Earth. You're afraid of what you felt. You're afraid that if your soldiers keep feeling things, they'll stop fighting. You're afraid your empire will fall apart like the Draxus did. But Commander, the Draxus didn't fall because of human music. They fell because they were already hollow. If your empire is strong, if your people truly believe in what they fight for, then one song can't hurt you. Can it?" It was a challenge, delivered quietly, but impossible to ignore. Day One watched the commander's face on the screen. The old warrior's jaw tightened, his hands clenched. Around him, other Karathi officers watched and waited. "Open all channels," Rax said finally. "Every ship in my fleet will hear this. If your song can truly destroy empires, human, then let it try." Minseo grabbed Day One's arm. "What are you doing? If this doesn't work?" "Then Earth was doomed anyway," Day One said. "At least this way, we go out trying." He returned to his equipment, but this time he left most of it silent. No electronic beats. No synthesizer. Just his Gaiagium and his voice. He thought about his grandmother, about the first song she taught him when he was 6 years old. A simple folk song that Korean mothers had sung to their children for 1,000 years. "This song is called Arirang," Day One said. "It's about longing, about missing home, about the pain of separation and the hope of return. Every human culture has songs like this. We sing them when we're far from home, when we've lost someone, when we need to remember that we're not alone." His fingers touched the Gaiagium strings. The first note rang out clear and pure. He sang in Korean, the words simple and old. The melody was haunting, built on the pentatonic scale that somehow felt universal despite being distinctly human. He didn't try to make it dramatic. He didn't add anything extra. He just sang the way his grandmother had taught him, with honesty and heart. On the Karathi flagship, Supreme Commander Rax stood on the bridge surrounded by his officers. The song played through every speaker. At first, the Karathi warriors sneered. They had heard the previous performance, they knew what to expect. They had armored themselves against it, but this was different. This wasn't a grand symphony meant to inspire or challenge. This was something smaller and somehow more devastating. A lullaby. A prayer. A memory of home. A young ensign was the first to break. He was barely out of training, assigned to weapon systems. He had joined the military because that's what Karathi did. They fought, they conquered, they never questioned. But his mother had sung to him when he was small, before the military took him for training. He had forgotten the melody, but hearing Day One's song brought it back. His hands moved away from his weapons console. He stood there, tears running down his face, and simply listened. Another soldier lowered her rifle, then another, then a dozen. The effect spread through the ship like a wave. Warriors who had never cried, who had been trained since childhood to suppress emotion, found themselves overwhelmed. On other ships, the same thing was happening. Thousands of Karathi soldiers all hearing the same simple song, all remembering things they thought they had lost. Homes they hadn't seen in years, families they rarely thought about, dreams they had abandoned to serve the Empire. Commander Rax felt it too. The song cut through his armor like it wasn't there. He was 70 years old. He had fought in 40 campaigns. He had given orders that killed millions. He had done it all for the glory of the Karathi Empire, never questioning, never doubting. But now he remembered being young. He remembered a girl he had loved before the military took him. He remembered wanting to be a teacher, not a soldier. He remembered choosing duty over happiness so many times that he forgot he had ever wanted anything else. He looked around his bridge. Every single officer was affected. Some stood frozen, others wept openly. His weapons officer had actually deactivated the targeting systems without being ordered. "Sir," his second-in-command said, her voice breaking, "I can't do this. I can't fire on them, I can't." Rax looked at the screen showing Day One on the council chamber stage. The young human was still playing, eyes closed, lost in the music. He wasn't trying to attack anyone. He was just sharing something honest and real. The commander's hand moved to the communication panel. His finger hovered over the button that would give the order to fire. One word. That's all it would take. The fleet would respond. Throne Prime would be destroyed. Earth would be sterilized. The threat would end, but his hand wouldn't move. "Stand down," he heard himself say. "All ships stand down." His bridge crew looked at him in shock. Through the fleet channel, he could hear confusion from other commanders. "Sir?" someone questioned. "You heard me," Rax said, his voice rough. "Weapons offline. Power down combat systems. We're not firing." On Throne Prime, the Council watched in stunned silence as the Karathi fleet's weapons powered down one by one. Hundreds of ships, all of them withdrawing from attack posture. Day One finished his song. The last note faded into silence. He opened his eyes and saw the displays showing the fleet standing down. He barely believed it. Commander Rax's face appeared on the screen again. But this time, the old warrior's expression was different. The hard mask had cracked. "I don't understand what you've done to us," Rax said quietly. "My entire fleet is compromised. My soldiers are crying. Some are asking to go home. By all military logic, I should consider this the most devastating attack in Karathi history." He paused, looking down at something off-screen. When he looked up again, there were tears on his face. "But I remember now," he continued. "I remember what we lost when we became an empire of warriors. I remember that we used to sing too. That we used to create things instead of just destroying them. And I'm tired. I'm so tired of fighting." "Then stop," Day One said simply. Rax laughed, but it sounded like a sob. "It's not that easy." "The Empire will survive," the Wanderer representative interrupted. standing in the council chamber. Or it will change, or it will fall and something better will rise. But you cannot hold back the tide forever, Commander. What this human has shown us is that we have been starving ourselves. We built great civilizations on logic and strength. But we forgot why civilizations exist: to make life better, to create meaning, to feel. The Veltari representative stood as well, his face still wet with tears. I move that Earth be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with complete cultural protection status. Anyone who attempts to harm Earth or suppress human music will answer to the full council. Seconded, came voices from a dozen different representatives. The vote was called. It passed almost unanimously. Only a handful of military empires abstained, but none voted against. Minseo grabbed Daewon in a fierce hug. You did it. You actually did it. But Daewon barely heard her. He was watching something happening on the screens. The silent collective, those beings who had been transformed by human music, were singing. Not in any human language, but in their own. They were creating their own songs, expressing their own emotions in ways their species had forgotten. A silt began a keening melody about loss and hope. A Veltari hummed a tune that sounded like joy. Even some of the Karathi soldiers were attempting songs, their voices rough and unpracticed but earnest. Music was spreading, not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as something that had been missing from the galaxy for too long. Ven, the Harmony Incorporated representative, tried one last time. The council must regulate this. Human music is too powerful to be freely distributed. My corporation can manage. No, Daewon said firmly. He walked to the council floor's central podium and addressed the assembly directly. Music isn't something you can own or control. It's not a product. It's part of being alive. Every species here has the capacity for emotion. You just forgot how to express it. So I'm making an offer. Complete free access to all human music. No restrictions, no copyrights, no payments. Anyone who wants to learn, to listen, to create, can do so freely. You're making a mistake, Ven said angrily. You could have been wealthy. You could have controlled the greatest resource in the galaxy. I don't want to control it, Daewon said. I want to share it. That's what music is for. Harmony Incorporated collapsed within a month. Without the ability to monopolize human music, their entire business model fell apart. But no one mourned. The galaxy had discovered something worth more than profit. 3 months after the council session, Daewon returned to Earth. He walked through the streets of Seoul like he used to, carrying his Geagium. But everything was different now. His grandmother's music school was packed. Students from 40 different